Hello, welcome to the Daily Report. I'm Lindsay Reiser. Habemus Papam, we have a pope, and for the first time in history, an American, Cardinal Robert Prevost, now Pope Leo XIV, the head of the Catholic Church.
Proviene da Dio, Dio che ci ama tutti, in condizione.
In his first remarks to tens of thousands of people gathered in St. Peter's Square, Pope Leo called for peace and paid tribute to the late Pope Francis. He was born and raised in Chicago. The 69-year-old spent a large portion of his career in Peru, where he's also a citizen. Pope Leo served as a missionary and an archbishop there. Pope Francis elevated him to cardinal in 2023. White smoke rose from the Sistine Chapel's chimney on Thursday afternoon, signaling the cardinals had elected a new pope. It happened just over 24 hours after the conclave voting process began. It's not the shortest conclave in history. That was in 1503, when Pope Julius II was elected after just 10 hours of voting. Roughly 100,000 people filled St. Peter's Square in Vatican City to celebrate the new pope, including many Americans who shared their excitement.
Just history in the making. Just to be at this conclave was already so exciting, but to have an American pope come out of it is just, unfathomable.
I just really hope that, this American Pope, he can, keep the train on the tracks rolling that Francesco did, the previous Pope, keep the church moving in the same direction.
And I think it's a clear signal. It's a message to the world that we have an American Pope to contrast what is going on in the United States right now.
CBS News senior foreign correspondent Seth Joan was in St. Peter's Square when the new pope was announced and joins us now from Rome. So, Seth, tell us more about what you're learning about the new pope and what has been the overall sentiment in Rome.
Overall sentiment was excitement and was shock. You saw some of those images there. I was down, the crowd estimates around 100,000. I was there right in the middle for hours. First this morning, waiting. We saw that black smoke, then back waiting through the heat. It was interesting to see people just gathering. And then when the Pope was announced, right after the white smoke, there was just this it's almost as though everyone in the crowd kind of lifted up a foot higher as we were all looking toward that loggia to see who it would be. And then when it was announced that it was an American, people's jaws were dropping. There was a man from Paraguay next to me whose jaw dropped, and people said, is it an American Pope? I mean, first ever American Pope. And we're starting to learn a little bit more about him. I was just next door here to where we're doing our conversation now, and that's where the Augustinian is. And we were talking with people who knew him. I spoke with one man who had lunch with him on Monday, and he said, he's a friend of mine. I couldn't believe when he walked out as the Pope. I said, what will it be, to another gentleman, I said, another priest, I said, what will it be like calling him Leo XIV? He said, well, around here, we call him Bob. We are learning he is probably in the line of Francis. This is a continuation of some of the legacy that Francis left. We know certainly was a lot made of the fact that he, of course, spoke. We heard the Latin, we heard him speaking in Italian, and then he spoke in Spanish, did not speak in English. I spoke with a Peruvian gentleman tonight who said, this is incredible for the Spanish-speaking world. It meant so much. He said, also, his Spanish is very good. We believe that he is really reaching out to kind of the margins as Pope Francis did. So we will see what he is like as Pope, but from a personal perspective, one thing that was noted by several people I spoke with who were friends with him, they said he's a kind man with a kind smile and a kind of gentle soul, not this big personality to think, oh, this guy's going to be Pope, but a gentleman.
Bob, that is something. Seth Joan, thank you so much. For more, let's bring in Jim Priestley. He is a friend of Pope Leo's. They went to high school together and attended Villanova University together. Thank you so much for being here, Jim. First of all, what was your reaction?
Well, I was shocked. I was completely shocked. I was watching it, so I couldn't believe it.
Did you think there was any possibility that his name was going to be recited by the deacon?
Well, I thought, because they had been, the media had mentioned his name a few times, so I thought, oh, maybe there's a possibility, but I didn't think it was likely, but it happened. It was a complete shock. I almost had a heart attack, but thank goodness I didn't.
Thank goodness, indeed. So as we mentioned, you've known Pope Leo for some time. You were even roommates. What are some of your favorite memories?
Well, I wasn't actually his roommate. We lived in a dormitory, so there were like 20 of us in the room. I guess technically I was his roommate, but there were 19 others who were also his roommate. But yeah, the funny thing is his bed was right next to mine because they just did alphabetical order, and I came after Prevost. So yeah, he's a very, 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 very nice guy. He's also extremely bright. He's a really smart guy. He got straight A's in high school, and I never really saw him studying too much. I saw him reading all the time. He was very studious in that sense, but he picked up the schoolwork with ease. He didn't have any issues with anything, unlike the rest of us. Well, there was one other student was another Bob who became a priest. He was also a brilliant guy. The two of them are extremely brilliant guys.
What about a sense of humor? What can you tell us about that?
Well, he'd laugh at a joke. I don't think he would, tell too many jokes, but he certainly would. Maybe he would now. I must say, I'm talking about like 1969 to 1977. That was the time we spent together. But I wouldn't. He certainly wasn't the class clown. He'd certainly laugh at a joke. He's got a good sense of humor, I would say. Yes.
What do you think he'll bring to the Catholic Church?
Well, he's an extremely devout religious man. He's devoted his life to Christ. He's had, very difficult assignments through the years. I mean, he was a missionary in Peru. He left, he left America with all our creature comforts and was willing to go down to Peru and be a missionary. And my understanding is he was very successful. He built a seminary for the Augustinians, and so I think he will bring a real religious fervor, but also he's extremely bright. So he's going to understand all the problems, all the complexities. He already understands them, I'm sure. And he no one's going to have to go through any great explanation of things for him because he's going to pick it up right away. He's very well organized. So I'm sure that with financial issues facing the church and things, I think he'll probably do as well as anybody could to kind of help those out. But also he's a tremendous public speaker, and he knows all these languages, including English, which I think would really, obviously he speaks English, but he's a great public speaker. I think his public speaking style is very warm but also a little bit cerebral too. So he's this very, very bright guy. He's got several degrees. He's got the equivalent of a PhD and a couple of PhDs. I think he's a very bright guy, and so that will help the church too. I think to have somebody of that intellect as the Pope.
Well, Jim Priestley, we really appreciate your time. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Let's go to CBS News papal contributor Candida Moss now for more analysis. She's an Edward Cadbury Professor of Theology at the University of Birmingham in the UK. Does any of that surprise you?
Well, I think it was surprising to have an American Pope, but of course he's not an American Pope. He's also Peruvian. He's lived a lot of his life on the margins. He also has a doctorate in canon law. He's been an archbishop. He has served in administrative roles in the Vatican. He really encompasses everything that is the Catholic Church right now.
Why choose the name Leo? What does that signal about his upcoming papacy?
It's a really interesting choice. The immediate predecessor, Leo XIII, is really the founder of social justice in Catholicism. He was a supporter of workers' rights and trade unions. We might also hear echoes of the first Pope Leo, Leo the Great, who was able to negotiate peace with powerful and aggressive secular leaders, and who was an intellectual, as the new Pope Leo is.
He's considered a centrist, right, but progressive on some issues. Where does he stand ideologically?
So on issues like the death penalty, the rights of immigrants, reaching out to the poor, things that Pope Francis really championed, we can assume that Pope Leo is going to be exactly the same. And if you want to see that, you can just go look at his Twitter feed, because there he tweets about exactly these issues. On issues that matter to conservatives, things like LGBT inclusion or pro-life matters, and of course Pope Francis was pro-life as well, or traditional marriages, he appears to be quite the traditionalist. And so in that way, he's going to be a unifying force for the church.
What does the length of this conclave mean? It was after at least 4 ballots. It's possible it was the 5th ballot, but essentially less than 2 days. It started yesterday. Is that surprisingly short in your view?
I think it's surprising considering that he's actually kind of a dark horse.
Right.
We expected it to be Paroline when the white smoke went up, because that was the name that was being talked about in advance. What's clear is that he was able to garner support from everywhere, and it seems that to South American cardinals, he's one of them. He's not an American.
What does it mean for the Catholic Church as a whole when we're seeing large numbers grow in Africa? There's growing Catholicism in Europe, in Asia. The Americas, not so much. Do you think that his election as Pope will change that?
Well, this is going to be an electrifying and invigorating moment for North American Catholicism, and of course for South American Catholicism as well. Only 6% of the world's Catholics are here in the US, and certainly there's going to be a period of great excitement because he seems like he's one of us. You know, he went to Villanova, he's from Chicago, but he's really going to be a man of the global church. When he was the prefect of the Order of Augustinians, he wasn't just responsible for Augustinians in South America, but around the world, and that meant that he was really a steadying hand on an order that was sort of a microcosm for the Catholic Church. The fact that he spoke in Spanish and greeted the Peruvians suggests that he's not leaning in to his American identity. And one of the interesting things about his name is that Pope Leo XIII actually condemned what he called Americanism, which was sort of capitalistic excess. And so we might see in this new Pope Leo an effort to really represent a global church, not an American one.
There's always a lot of talk about sort of the logistics, and people are fascinated with, for example, where is he going to live? How is he going to get about? Are those some questions that you're wondering as well, or is that maybe not as important as what else the next few days will bring in terms of what apartment he chooses, for example, and what that signifies?
I think it's really Pope Francis that made these live questions for us. You know, now we wonder, well, where is he going to live? Because Pope Francis chose not to live in the papal apartments. He did wear the mazzetta, the red cape, when he came out on the Loggia, which suggests that he is in some ways more traditional than Pope Francis. So I think these are real questions, but probably his focus will be on the busy days ahead of him, including the Mass that will start tomorrow morning with the cardinals.
All right, Candida Moss, thank you. For more, let's bring in Father Patrick Mary Briscoe. He's a Dominican friar and editor of Our Sunday Visitor, a national Catholic magazine. Thank you so much for being here, Father. As an American Catholic, what does Pope Leo's election mean to you?
Frankly, I was thrilled. I could hardly believe it. When I heard his name, I recognized it, but I turned to one of my colleagues as we were standing on the loggia in total disbelief. I had to confirm it in order just to make sure that it was true. But in short, I was overjoyed, truly proud to have an American, but not just that, truly proud to have a man who I think will be a great pope, someone who really will unite the church and will lead us, continuing on many of Pope Francis' reforms, but who will lead us to the next phase in this moment of history.
And the Vatican Central Office of Church Statistics says North Americans make up just over 6% of the global Catholic population. That's from the yearly papal yearbook. Does that make this all the more surprising? Do you think he will bring more Catholics into the church?
Well, I certainly think that it's all the more surprising, but Pope Francis did talk about a church on the margins, and I guess in that way we can consider the United States on the margins. But we should also add, certainly, that our new Pope, that Pope Leo, is a Pope of the whole world, that really coming from Peru with his missionary activity there, and having lived here in Rome, he really offers a perspective on the church really coming from the heart of the world. Now, what I do hope is that he will be a Pope who is really evangelical. And by that, I mean that he's the kind of Pope that can reach Catholics who are maybe inactive in their faith, and that he'll reach people who are not Catholic to bring them into the church. And that's what I found so compelling about his first words, because he wished us all peace, but not just a kind of generic peace. He wished us the peace of the risen Christ. And that was a profound and spiritual message hidden there in his first words from the Loggia.
What do his next few days look like?
Well, I know that he's already been active. Just tonight he went over to his residence and to say goodbye to those with whom he lives. A very touching moment from the people who experienced, just very quietly, thanking them and asking for their prayers. It was a very beautiful moment. We know that he's going to meet with Vatican journalists coming up soon next week. So I think these early days are going to be days where he really sets the tone, where he continues to tell us what kind of Pope he'll be. We've already learned that he's not afraid to be his own man. He's clearly going to be a Pope who's an independent thinker and someone who is really the right Pope for this moment in history.
Father Patrick Mary Briscoe, thank you.